Welcome back. This is K24 This Morning, third and final part, of course, of our newspaper review right now. We're talking about devolution before we took the break, and whether it's being strengthened, the way it stands right now, of course, it's an issue both in the BBI and as well in the relaunched Punguza Mzigo Kenya draft proposal that has been put in place. That's the key issue right there. But as we see right now, we talk about it, but as they say, qua ground, things are looking different. Things are looking different.
Actually, things are different, but to the extent that there's a lot that has really happened in this country and in the advent of devolution. I want to pick on a specific-ish area like healthcare. We all remember that was in, I think, 2014, the year 2014, yeah, 2014, and it was the first time a cesarean section was able to be done in Mandera County, after in excess of 50 years of independence. And that was only enabled by the fact that there were resources now at the county level whereby health facilities could be constructed and even medical personnel and all that could be achieved. This has been the case. We have seen what Professor Kibwana has done in Makueni. We have seen Professor Chepkwony in Kericho and many other places. And that's the reality. And now people don't have to keep begging and sending Mheshimiwa to come and beg in Nairobi for him to get some little resources to do a few things. But also there is, I can also give you an example in Nairobi. You realize Nairobi, for the last about 40 years, there has been very little in terms of actual development matching the population growth. For the first time now, we have seen new hospitals being done, because previously there were hospitals. I was actually privileged to be at Mbagathi Hospital 2 days ago. And the main administration block is a building that was done in the 1950s, funded by the Royal Majesty. And largely, when you look at the infrastructure, nothing much has changed for the last 60 years. But lately, we have seen a lot of equipping of these facilities and a lot of expansion, even local small dispensaries and all that. This tells you that devolution is actually working, especially in areas that were previously neglected. I want to pick a specific issue that is finally captured in the BBI report. When you look at the last page, there is the issue of reverting Nairobi to the national government. And you realize one of the biggest challenges that Nairobi has is there are individuals who have made Nairobi to be a cash cow. Remember when people used to talk about City Hall, the Hall, H-O-L-E. Actually, there are people who have made billions of shillings from actually stealing from the residents of Nairobi since independence. And one of the key things we must be able to agree, because it is open, records are available. One thing we must be able to agree is Governor Sonko has made it impossible for individuals to continue cutting away money in gunny sacks every evening the way they used to do. And that's why I find the proposals myopic, in the sense that it could be directed at an individual, while Nairobi has been around here for the last 120 years, and Nairobi is going to be here probably for the next 1,000,000 years.
So you feel that particular recommendation is
it cannot work, because we cannot deny the 7 million residents of Nairobi the same democratic rights as the residents of Nyandarua or Kericho or even Lamu. If we are electing a president from Lamu, the people of Nairobi must be able to elect a president. Okay. If the people of Lamu are electing a senator, the same thing with Nairobi. If the people of Nairobi are electing MCAs or governors, then that must be standard, because that is the essence of democracy. Okay. This idea of a few cartels sitting somewhere and thinking that they can put Nairobi in their pocket must be called out.
Okay, Jero, I'll come to you very quickly on this same devolution issue. Where does it stand for you right now as you look at it very quickly?
You know, I'm a very big supporter of devolution, and it's unfortunate that even documents such as the BBI that are proposing a voluntary regional economic bloc or the disappearing of county number 47 are even being discussed. I think cynically one might argue that you talk about corruption at the national level, at the central level, and how it has devolved to the counties. But per ground, you can see how many Kenyans have actually benefited from devolution. I heard someone talk about about some of the counties in Western, and they say, go there. It's not what it was 15 years ago. So devolution should be allowed to grow, should be allowed to thrive. And this hamstringing of the counties by withholding the release of revenue so that suppliers are not being paid, so salaries are not being paid, it's really a roundabout way of slowly strangling devolution. And we should never, as Kenyans, allow this to happen. And when I think about the politics behind it, it's about the central, the national government losing its grip, its foothold on some of the areas. If you look still at health and the type of control that's still exerted over the counties from the central level, if you look at issues of energy, for example, where many residents of counties have lost out, whether it's issues of mining, of exploration, of electricity generation, and so on and so forth, where you leave compensations not paid. When things are controlled at national government, then the counties suffer, in my opinion. And so this is why I believe that by all means, we should protect and defend devolution. I'm not saying protect corrupt governors, no. And in fact, the Senate has an oversight role, which I don't think it's playing as effectively as it ought to oversee and make sure, not just to protect the governors, but to protect devolution and make sure that the Kenyans, the 50 million Kenyans that we are, really benefit from devolved services. And the fourth schedule of the Constitution is very clear around issues of management, county management of utilities, for example, including water, including electricity. And yet the same BBI report is saying that it wants counties to generate more and more income. If some of these things are not operationalized, how do counties generate their own income? So you're expecting them to contribute to the national pie through collection of taxes and through other things. But ultimately, if you're again paralyzing the same counties and not giving them the ability to determine how their resources are used, we have a very big problem.
Okay. Honorable Kioni, I'll also come to you on this particular issue quickly on devolution, because we're looking at a point of view where we're all talking about it and saying that it should stay, but it seems like it's still crippled even as we try to move it along.
Let me first start by saying that I now believe that there is no Kenyan, and especially in the political field, who does not support devolution. And I think one of the ways to scare people from discussing this issue objectively is to say that any suggestion you have is meant to kill devolution. Devolution is the best thing that we gave ourselves 2010, and I believe every single Kenyan, and at least all those in the political activities with whom we interact with regularly, are in support of devolution. As to whether we have gotten to where we wanted, that is the question we are saying not yet. Should we then give suggestions of how we can improve? Yes. Should we condemn anybody thinking that it should be managed differently? No. We should actually encourage those suggestions more and more. And let me tell you something again I gathered from that country, which is, I think, the best devolution model. The difference between us and Germany is that devolution created the national government. In our case, the national government is creating devolution. So the difficulties that we are having are things that we should respect as a people, and there are things we must overcome. And we only do that by allowing all suggestions to come on the table. I must quickly say that in Parliament already, even outside BBI, there is an amendment to the Constitution to ensure that we manage, or to suggesting that we manage Nairobi City differently, completely outside the BBI. But we can actually see the BBI also picking out, and for different reasons. One of the other things that is also interesting in Germany, what is the principle? There is no competition between counties. And Kenyans are not competing with one another, or the Kenyans of Germany. The Germans are not competing with one another. They actually, the bottom line is, how can we improve the dignity of every German? How can we improve and our Constitution talks about dignity of Kenyans. How can we ensure that every Kenyan has dignity in terms of living, health, clothing, education, all those things? And if they feel like a part of the country of German is suffering indignity because of inadequate resources, the rich counties pump money in that county. Those counties. They have a formula of getting resources from the rich county, like now Nairobi, flooding Lamu, as opposed to where we see the counties competing. A very unique thing. The other thing that they also don't have is that the issue of, they are very keen, they are very careful on the amount of money they use for development. They don't want, money is not used for recurrent. It is to improve the welfare of people.
Okay.
In our country, we have a lot of money going into development, which we must address. They have another very important thing that they have also said. We have capped the employment in our provisions, that a county must employ 70% locals. The question is, if we are all getting money from the same kitty, and we are all Germans, why stop one community from being employed in another area? The employment is open. You can get employed in any county irrespective of where you come from. And that, so that when that where you come from also, the county can also be able to say, indignity in that county is too low, or the dignity in that county is not up to standard, let's fund it. You know, there is no question of this competition. And I think we created some unnecessary competition in the way we provided for in the structure of these governments, which we need to address. Okay. And I think there is the issue of the quality of the MCAs. I want to say this. We had the people we were meeting at the county, the so-called MCAs in our case, they are professors, PhD, retired senior civil servants, senior persons in the corporate world. And when they sit, they engage on issues in a very, it is a joy to listen to them. So, and that is another area that we need to address ourselves. And it's a question, actually the chapter on ethos, ethics and ethos. What kind of, it has a lot to do with also the quality of readers that we put in place.
Before that, I want to bounce to Ken on this, please, because just one, Ben, please, let's just bounce to Ken on this, because also, as you talk about this, very many improvements being given as to how we can actually improve devolution. From where you stand, what do you feel is actually the way forward? Is it just the funding issue? Is it this third tier that has been spoken about severally? How do you actually improve devolution moving forward?
I think devolution is a good thing, but the idea that everybody is giving should be taken on board. And one of the things that we need to do, I think for me, like all other things in this country, the bad political manners, because the principles are there. How faithful are we to those principles? How faithful are we to the fact that we want to tap resources in counties? In principle, it's set out that we need to create more wealth at the counties. But we cannot create that wealth unless we are releasing resources that can tap those things. Our bad manners, we must let off go strangulation, which is real from the national government. Two, we are not lacking in terms of human resources in those places. We have a problem of our own thing of capture. The bad manners that we've taken from here have gone there. But having said that, it's important that we begin to redefine what we need, who are our leaders, and how do we hold them to account. Our politics must begin to change, because we give the leadership to the people there, and they must take charge. Right. What happens in the regional assemblies? We want to bring our people in so that they can protect our own things. Right. But we must begin to change our national way of thinking politics, because we do not have ideology. We just have about the stomach and myself and my people. Right. That's where the problem is. We do not have a shortage of laws. The laws are there. But finally, what I want to refuse is this thing that Kenyans are to blame. Who is a Kenyan? We do a representative democracy, but those same guys have a way. If you disempower the people who have given you authority, given you power to direct them, then you are going to manipulate them. You stop being a leader to a manipulator. And this is where the problem is in this country. Our leaders are supposed to be turned into manipulators, because they take advantage of our vulnerabilities. Right. The moment they begin to look at service, and we agree that diversity of thought is good for every one of us, then we are going somewhere else. Devolution is a good thing, and it should be let to work. Okay. But the Treasury must let off its strangulation.
Okay. Okay, Ben, we'll have to move on. We'll have to move on, Ben, because of time, to our last topic of the day, because we'll still come back and talk about devolution.
This will solve the problem Mheshimiwa is pointing out. The mindset that devolution came with, especially the governors and even a majority of the MCAs, was from the previous local authorities, from the LATIF, where money used to come to the villages for people to eat. So that is the only problem we need to change, so that this is not money coming to us, because the competition arises. Muranga wants more money because they want more money to eat. not to serve.
Right.
The minute we kill that narrative, a lot of things
we can
will
move
change.
forward.
Yes.
Okay. I want us to move now quickly to our last topic of the day, but also a very sad one. This one, you can find it on the Daily Nation's front page as well, and it's all about Daniel Mboro Wangari. He's a boda rider who went against, all odds, decided to push his way through Mama Lucy Security Hospital, got in there, got past security because he had to take a girl who needed urgent medical attention. On his way out, a scuffle ensues, an argument ensues with a police officer, and he is shot dead. This is on the same day that IPOA was also releasing the report as far as how they've been handling the police in that particular regard. And we sit here and ask ourselves, so where do we take this from here? Is it IPOA supposed to follow up on this? Internal affairs, should it go all the way up to the IT? Because this is such a needless loss of a life.
Absolutely.
It almost feels like he was killed for doing the right thing.
Imagine. Actually, you know, Jeff, I listened to the news when they broke out on radio. I was in traffic yesterday, and my heart sank because I was listening actually to the witness accounts. Now, the people who were at that time at Mama Lucy Hospital being interviewed, and my soul was cut into pieces because I can't even begin to imagine where to describe or how to describe this tragedy. This is somebody who actually gave their lives to save a life of a young child, and they went to hospital. Of course, there's usually that standard bureaucracy, and that's an issue we need to be able to address in this country. Perhaps if this young child had been brought in an ambulance with the sirens, the gates would have been opened without much ado. But the Constitution also guarantees everybody to a right to emergency treatment. And this boda rider was just insisting that he must be able to drive and get this child to the attention of the doctors immediately before it gets worse. And because now the security guards were dissatisfied or were unhappy with the way he approached them, they cornered him when he was actually leaving the facility. And I think that was really tragic. But the saddest bit of it is the level of indignity that a few elements have introduced into the National Police Service, whereby human life counts for nothing. We must begin to speak boldly about the impunity with which the police are operating, especially treating young men in the larger Eastlands area of this country. All these young men would not wish to be in those situations if indeed we had a better functional economy than what we have. But this idea of trigger-happy officers just choosing to kill innocent citizens for nothing it must actually come to an end. But there is a very important issue that now must come to the fore as we discuss the death of the young Mburu. We have been talking about police reforms for the longest time you can remember. But the most tragic thing is we decided just changing the color of blue into a funnier blue is going to be amount to police reforms. We realize that new constitution came with a lot of changes in terms of how we should continue to engage as a country socially. What has not happened is actually to transition also the National Police Service from the brute force that was inherited from the colonial times into a social service program or a social service unit that actually can interact with wananchi and understand that they are better off working together than working against each other. I am not sure whether the curriculum at Kiganjo or any other facilities has actually been updated sufficiently to match the requirements of the new constitution. So what we have is we have a largely depressed National Police Service. We must agree.
Okay. If
you look at the statistics that were released actually late last year by the IPOA, the fact that in 2018 there were about 60-something cases of police officers involved in violent crime. That number shot to in excess of 578 in 2019. Tells you that there's something really wrong in the way the National Police Service is being managed. And my take would be, I would want to challenge the interior CS and the PS. Instead of the too much drama we are seeing about nothing, they really need to maybe, even if it is to benchmark the way Mheshimiwa was out there, to look at what is happening on devolution, we need really to embark on a mission genuinely to transform the National Police Service. First, agree they are human beings, they have their challenges, social challenges. Look at, it's not about buying them new boots and new Land Cruisers and all those things. There is the human component that is being left out in terms of addressing the plight of the police service.
Jero, I'll come to you as well, because we've embarked on the journey of reform, but when we see instances like this, we realize it's like we're not getting it right. We're not actually getting to the core of the issue.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about the core of the issue for me. You know, I think we're a very violent society as Kenyans. Whether it is somebody who raped a young woman from Kibabi University and chopped off her hand, which was found on the roof of a neighbor's house the next day, or Babu Owino pulling out a gun and shooting a DJ in a club. I mean, the police officers are simply empowered with weaponry. And whether people have crude weapons, pangas or sticks, or they have actual firearms, there is something that is pervasively violent. We are in a violent environment. We are violated constantly as Kenyans. Our pocketbooks are violated. Our senses are violated. So when I look at the police force in isolation, then I'm not going to get to the core of the issue. I'm not going to get to the heart of the issue. My brother Ben has already spoken about some of the systemic issues. But for me, so long as the Hessis are walking around, permitted unofficially to engage in extrajudicial killing, so long as till today we don't know what happened to the police officers who were brutalizing students at JKUAT. This reported case of Mburu, and may his soul rest in peace, reminds me of that boda rider also who was shot at the coast, who was dropping off someone or picking up someone at the Navy base and was shot dead. And then there was a whole debate around, oh, it's a national security, it's an security installation, should he have been there or not? We are dealing with trigger-happy Kenyans. And so long as we don't understand that at the core of the violence in this society is our own violation, our lack of healing as a people collectively from either the tribulations of colonialism, the mentalities that got passed on. These things then go. That's why when you have an interior secretary who spends his life shouting at people, you have his principal secretary who even went, was it to Kirinyaga County, to abuse the governor. You know, don't look at that police officer who says, oh, my gun went off by mistake. Look up the line, go further up the line. Go all the way to CS Matiang'i. Go all the way to PS Kibisho. See how they conduct themselves. If those guys had guns, they'd probably blow people's brains out too. So we are having, we are in a situation where violence is the order of the day. Domestically, privately, publicly. If you're annoyed with somebody, the road rage that you see, people yelling at each other, hitting each other, coming out. There was a time I said something, I think somebody got out of a car and almost came to yank me out of my car to beat me up. Luckily, traffic was moving and I kept going. So there's violence. And that violence, you can trace it back to an unstable and traumatized society as a whole. That no BBI, no elastoplast, Band-Aid reforms are going to deal with. So for me, this is just the center and it radiates out to a larger problem that is affecting us as Kenyans.
Okay, I'll come to you as well, Honorable Kioni, on this, even as we wind up on this particular issue on the show. We've seen this severally, and as Gerald pointed out, different instances where the police use, I mean, more force than is needed, extrajudicial killings, and it seems like it's a cycle. We say we're going to start on reforms, we start on it, and then here we are yet again.
I think one of the things we really must send our condolences to this young man and commend him for the act that he has done to, volunteer to take a sick child to hospital. It's a really commendable thing, and we have very many young men who are doing this on a daily basis, and we must thank them and encourage them to continue doing it, even with this kind of disaster that happened to their colleague. I think yesterday. This happened yesterday, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I think it is. It's also important also to condemn this act by this police officer, and I hope the police officer was arrested and is behind bars. And we hope to. I would be happy to see him in court today, because that is crucial. It's and I think it's also important to ask ourselves whether there is somebody who dropped the ball. I don't know whether. I feel like Boynet had a little bit better grip on the service than it is now, than Mutiabai. And Mutiabai would have to do something, because it looks like we came down. Instead of building on what Boynet had done, it's like we came 2 steps. We are now like 2 steps down the stairs. And I think that needs to be done. The issue of reforms, we have been reforming this thing since I was young. I don't believe there is any reforms that will help us get us through. We have an institution called IPOA. maybe it has no teeth. It has become part of the police system. Yesterday, in Parliament, we provided for an opportunity for all these constitutional commissions to be reporting to Parliament, and there will be adequate time to report their reports. And it's one of the ways of implementing the Constitution. Because what was happening before is that they will file reports with Parliament and they will not be debated. So I'm sure when IPOA's report comes, a lot of these issues will come out. But let me also say that certainly, I believe that we have a country of people who really love peace. And there's a lot of humanitarian action coming from Kenyans, from moreover. And we need to thank Kenyans for that and encourage them in that route. As we condemn this police officer, do you have his name even?
No, they have not.
They haven't given us his name for obvious reasons. But as we condemn him, I think also it's good to recognize, because we don't want to kill the police. There are also very many police officers who did some very good deeds yesterday, only that they are not recorded. So I will avoid blanket condemnation, but call upon Mutiabai to up his act, IPOA to do the work that they were required to do, encourage the boda people to continue doing this. I have the same issue in my constituency. We have roadblocks that are just asking for 50 shillings. That place, Mairoine, you go to Daragwa, they are doing that on a daily basis. And I am receiving these complaints from the young men on a daily basis. So this issue of 50 bob is a real thing across the country. And it needs to be dealt with. But let me also say this. Even as we applaud these good actions, we also need to be cautious on the issue of boda. I get very scared when I see them driving on the wrong side of the road in this town. The kind of accident that you can cause can also be very, very bad. I don't understand how, but they all seem to be driving on the wrong side of the road. And if we again allow that culture to continue, when are we ever going to be able to stop it? Something that also needs to be addressed.
Finally, Ken, I want to come to you on our last minute of the show. How do we do day 2 follow-up on such stories? Because it seems like with the JQ1 students who are beaten, we report it on the first day an incident, but we usually don't follow through as the media. How do you pick up and actually follow through and see what happens to the officer who killed Mboro and other such like instances?
I think in that way we have failed. We seem to be consumed by issues of the moment, and but we need to bring a column. Something says, lest we forget. This is where we need to go to. But just a quick thing, that since 2017, we have had a progressive police force, a police service that is getting brutal. And there are statistics to indicate this. Since 2017, out of that political intolerance, that kind of skirmish, we have had too many incidences, and we seem to be going on. And like we rightly pointed out, the leadership within the Interior Ministry needs to reevaluate the way it also deals out with the public. If it's intolerant, the people below them can get away with murder. And my heart goes out to that boda man, but it goes down to what? No initiative in this country, BBI or anything else, Punguza Mzigo, can begin to redress our own issues, because they just come, we have no attachment, we have no ownership to those things. So, enforcement. Where would the police, instead of doing the right thing, be taking money to let the bodas vehicles violate everything else? There's a whole thing that has to change.
That's where we leave it as far as our newspaper review is concerned this morning. We'll still be looking at your views. You can continue to tweet us at K24 TV or SMS us alternatively on 21222. Thank you so much for making time, Ben Amuna, this morning. Asante sana for making time as well. Jero, thank you so much for coming through as well. Jero did say active citizen. I think we'll just tell them online again because that question is still lingering there. It's still an open question as to what an active citizen is. Ken Musire, managing editor of the PD, thank you so much for making time this morning. Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, thank you so much for making time this morning. We take a short break. Back on the other side as we get interactive. This is K24 This Morning.